Hi there, I'm Claire McDonald-Liu and this is the Family Health Lab. In today's conversation, I'm talking with Sam Feltham of the Public Health Collaboration. Sam talks about how his own childhood cancer changed his view of health forever, the foods he chooses for his own children, and how we can all live longer, healthier lives with these simple first steps.
You're listening to the Family Health Lab. Healthy parents, healthy kids.
Hi Sam, thank you for joining me. It's lovely to see you again. We haven't spoken in a little while.
Absolute pleasure, Claire. And yeah, it has been a beat. So yeah, it's nice to catch up.
Yeah. So I just wanted to start with Justin has a screensaver, Justin, my husband, and it's inspired by you. Did you know that? Has he told you that?
He hasn't told me this. Go on.
You've inspired his screensaver, not his wife, not his children, and you. And it's numbers on a countdown, and it's something to do with. Yeah. Can you explain that?
Yeah, well, I could just grab a whiteboard off of my wall.
Oh, go on. Yeah.
So this, right? If everybody, let me try and get the white balance right on this. There we go.
20s.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, I count the number of weeks that I live. I have lived. So currently, I've lived 2,078 weeks of
Congratulations.
what I'm hoping. Yeah, thank you very much. It's kind of like taking the extreme of kids to the next level. Like you start counting in weeks, don't you? Then it goes to months and then years. But I've kind of like done it in reverse. But I'm hoping to reach 5,200 weeks. That being 100. 100 years. The average lifespan is 4,000 weeks, and that's where this came from. So there's a book called 4,000 Weeks by a journalist called Oliver Burkeman, and the reason that he wrote it is because he's a self-confessed productivity geek, and so he has tried every kind of hack, time efficiency hack that you can imagine. But having gone through that process of trying to hack life and stuff like this, it's like, right, let's just kind of, slow down a little bit. And the counting your life in weeks kind of helps you slow things down a bit more and being able to segment it a bit better, rather than kind of, trying to fill out every single thing. It was a philosophy that really kind of resonated with me. And yes, we want to try and fit in lots of things, but you also need to have that long-term perspective, and kind of counting things in weeks enables you to have maybe a bit more of a well-balanced long-term perspective. In terms of having urgency to do things, but not trying to kind of live at a pace where you just reach burnout, and then you destroy yourself, basically. So you just need to make sure that you balance it out. So that's where all that came from.
And is it working? Justin loves it, and it's helped him feel, that sense of perspective of kind of, I suppose also what you're saying is prioritizing what's most important, family time, getting your own values, living with purpose, work that's got meaning, and not sweating the small stuff. But then is it working for you?
It works for me. I've been doing it for well over a year now. It's a good thing to kind of start the week with as well. It's like, you rub out the week, and I put it like the week commencing date so that I can make sure that I'm correct in that. And I also put the actual week of the year as well, because that's something that kind of they actually do more on the European continent, kind of in Germany and places like that. They actually look at the year in terms of weeks, and it's like everybody knows that this is week 5 of the year. In the UK, you don't really have that.
No.
So if you got that perspective of like, this is week 5 or week 6 or week 40, you kind of have, I don't know, it just gives you more of a sense of where you are, and it's a bit more manageable in my head.
I like it, and I think a lot of us are interested in productivity. You mentioned he was a productivity geek. I'd not heard of it until Justin was telling me about it. Justin has got his automated, by the way, because he's obviously technology geek.
Of
So
course.
you're doing the
I'm
hard
going
yards.
old school. Yeah, totally.
That's it. But yeah, I thought that was just really nice. And if you didn't know that he was, he'd been quite inspired by that, then that's we're living in great times where we can tune into these different things that interest us and kind of ways to remind ourselves to kind of tweak our lives and kind of get them on a certain pathway so that we can achieve health or progress with work or living with meaning. So it's good times, really.
Yeah, very much so. And you always have to remember that, you're still a person. And yes, it's great to kind of utilize things like AI and technology and things like that, but you are still a human being. You still have naturalistic needs. You still need to go out in nature, breathe fresh air, actually touch the earth as well, and things like that. So just make sure that you're getting that balance, because kind of, what Oliver Burkeman talks about in the book is that he was, solely focused on trying to utilize technology to its maximum potential, but then that was burning him out. So you've always just got to make sure that you always step back and create a balance in your life. So
and hard to do sometimes, as we were saying.
It's incredibly hard. Balance is difficult, and it's not. It's kind of like, if life was a seesaw, you're always putting one thing on one end and one thing on the other, and you're always trying to balance it. And it's like it's almost touching the ground, and it's almost touching the ground on the other side, and things like that. And it is always like that. But yeah, you just got to do your best to try and get that equilibrium. And
I still think that we're in luckier times perhaps in our parents' generation with work choices and loads of lifestyle choices that we can make, and just the resources and knowledge of how to be well if you want to try to get yourself on track. There's just now so many resources. So just bring us on to the nutrition and the health kind of side of things. You've been in this space for so long, really, and you started with your own fitness business. That's right. And I'm just curious, why health and why then public health? You went really from your own health and then business health, and then it was you seem very, very, very passionate about other people's health and the community's health.
Yeah, definitely. So my professional career, I was a website designer, and that's what I did at uni. And then, multimedia production and technology, it was called at the time. I don't think that exists anymore. but it was yeah, exactly. But it was basically because website design was actually becoming a career that people were getting into in the early 2000s. And it was a culmination of website design, computer networking, graphic design, and stuff like that. So I was learning like the hardcore HTML, DHTML, PHP, all of the P's, and all of the coding that you could possibly do in the early 2000s. And that was fine. Then I did a year of website design at a company. And then realised that I didn't want to work in an office for the rest of my life. So I decided to up sticks and train as a snowboard instructor. So I went to New Zealand and did a 2-month snowboard instruction course in Queenstown at Coronet Peak, which was just awesome. That was fantastic. Then I did 4 years of back-to-back seasons, Northern and Southern Hemisphere, of snowboard instruction, in Vermont, Colorado, Canada, the Alps, and always flip-flopping back to Queenstown. So Southern Hemisphere was always the same, but Northern Hemisphere, it was I changed it every year. So that was fantastic. But after 4 years of that, I'd realised that I don't know, I just felt a bit unstable in terms of the fact that I was having to make new friends every 6 months. And however much fun that is in your mid-20s, it when you do get to your late 20s and you're kind of thinking, okay, what's the next decade going to look like? I wanted to settle down basically, and moved back to the UK. and managed to get in my brother's box room in Bow, East London, and trained up as a master personal trainer. And from there, I did personal training for like 3 months, and then realized there was something kind of missing. And it's kind of fun working with people one-on-one, but I really missed the group environment of snowboard instruction. And you get so much out of being in a group scenario. Particularly with snowboarding, people can kind of give you feedback on things and stuff like that. It's a real social thing, is snowboarding. And so I wanted to recreate that. And, in 2010, it was kind of like the height of fitness boot camps really taking off. And so I was like, right, yeah, I'll just do that. And so I managed to find a church hall where I could do it indoors, because I wanted to do it indoors rather than outside. I mean, there was literally yeah, exactly, in the UK specifically, not a problem in Oz.
In Ibiza, Australia.
Yeah, exactly. But there's British military fitness just up the road in Victoria Park. It's like, right, those guys have got it covered. Let me do an indoor one. I'll get the people that just want to do it indoors. And so that was great. And from 2010 to 2015, I grew that from my original location to 10 locations around the country. And as part of that, I had a YouTube channel and my own podcast called Smash the Fat, which was the name of the boot camp as well. All of that is still available on YouTube, so feel free to go back and look at my bright-eyed and bushy-tailed self interviewing people. But yeah, that enabled me to actually kind of have some notoriety within kind of the real food space, and specifically in low carb was where I mainly focused.
Which was at the very early doors, wasn't it? It was, you were so early on, really, not just to be promoting it, interviewing people like Dr. Peter Bruckner and others and connecting, but you were also just early to find it. So how did that piece fit in, finding low carb so early on?
So when you do your personal training qualification, you do a little bit of nutrition. Thankfully, who I studied through, European Institute of Fitness, they were fairly on the ball and kind of, spoke about hormones and, its relationship with food and, specifically carbohydrates, making you secrete more insulin and whatnot. And although it wasn't kind of overtly low carb, it's kind of like you can connect the dots, basically. And that really piqued my interest. And then it was in 2010 when Gary Taubes actually wrote his briefer version of Good Calories, Bad Calories, which was Why We Get Fat. And so that was absolutely fascinating to me, and opened up my mind to like this alternate perspective on things. And so instead of kind of, saying to my clients, focus on calories and make sure you do get some healthy whole grains in there and stuff like that, I was like, well, just focus on reducing your carbohydrates and then everything else will liberate itself. And so I started doing that, and I started getting better results with my clients. And so I was like, well, this is clearly working. So let's keep doing it. And then, over from 2010 to 2015, there was a real sequence of randomized controlled trials showing that low carb had, superior weight loss compared to low fat. And it's like, well, the randomized controlled trials are showing this. So it's clearly, there's a signal within the scientific literature that this is effective, and it's probably what's going on. And during that time as well, I did these overfeeding experiments on myself, where I overate twice as much as I usually would on 3 different diets: low carb, real food, low fat, fake food, and then very low fat, real food, and vegan was that 3rd one. And I tried to get the net calorie surplus as similar as possible. and on the first two, I managed to get it within 53 calories of each other. So it was like, as close as you could possibly get.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, totally. But very different results. So, although the calorie formula said I should have put on 7.1 kilograms on both of those diets, the low carb real food and the low fat fake food, I know 6.1 kilograms I should have put on. On the first one, the low carb one, I only put on 1.3. And then on the low fat fake food one, I should have only put on 6.1, but I actually put on 7.1. So I put on more than the calorie formula said. And then on the very last one, the very low fat vegan real food one, it said that I should have put on 5.2 kilograms, but I only put on 4.7 kilograms. But the interesting thing there is that that was the net calorie surplus was 7,000 calories less. And the reason that there was that discrepancy was because of the amount of dietary fiber that I was eating. So it was just, going out the other end without being digested. So, that's really interesting.
And with that was really interesting. And then with that experiment, you were talking about the weight on the scale, but didn't you notice something as well in like how your body shape? You were putting on inches around your waist, and then you were having side effects and symptoms, and then worrying cholesterol results as well. Other
other things were going on. So on the low carb one, I actually lost 1.5 centimeters from my waist.
Amazing.
And for a slim guy already, it's like, amazing that you could like eat more and actually get a slimmer waist. And then on the low fat fake food, I put on 9.25 centimeters on my waist, so just over 3 inches. And then on that last one, it was a couple of inches, so about 7. It was 7.75 centimeters on my waist. So again, despite being that 7,000 calories less than the first one.
And these were each diet style you did over, was it 3 weeks or
3 weeks? Three weeks. 3 weeks for each diet, and 3 months in between to kind of try and biochemically reset.
So that's an amazing amount to put on in that space of time, and just exactly one of the worst markers, putting visceral fat around your waist line as a young man in your 20s doing that.
Yeah, I was.
Exactly. So like going from lean to those, and then you were saying as well, and your information is still up there, that your heart health markers were going crazy, and also you were having additional health symptoms that were really unpleasant for your girlfriend or your wife.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so on the everything on the low carb one was fine. And there was actually one evening, I think it was like day 16 or something like that, one night where I woke up in like a massive sweat. So clearly, like my thermodynamics just went through the roof. Basically, it's like on overdrive. But the point was that I had the ability to do that. On the others, not so much. So on the others, the low fat fake food, my triglycerides quadrupled, and my blood glucose had significantly gone up. My asthmatic symptoms came back as well. So I used to have asthma, and being on a low carb real food diet, all of that goes away. And that came back, and even kind of like on my leisurely cycler commute to work, I was getting out of breath,
that's
which is
awful.
like, whoa, that is not good. So that was really bad. And then snoring, I was snoring as well, and things like that. Not ideal. And then kind of similar on the last one, where my asthmatic symptoms did return. Not as bad as the low fat fake food one. But my mental clarity on that last one had really diminished. It was something else, because I'd never done a purely vegan diet before, and so obviously my brain is used to having copious amounts of fat and protein. But, it basically put a stopper on my brain functioning properly.
How fantastic for you to have that experience. But I would have been scared if I was getting those types of health symptoms, and fascinating. But also, were you pretty worried about it?
I wasn't that worried because it was only 3 weeks. It was like, just get through it. And thankfully, I didn't have kids at the time, so that's what enabled it to happen. Really, I think it was only having to look after myself. So that was good.
Yeah, but it's interesting because all of that kind of stuff is in the news a lot now. It's kind of accelerating with low carb and keto have just come such a long way in the time that you've been working in the public health collaboration and working in health generally. But now ultra processed food, it's making such big noises. It was just slowly, the NOVA classifications have really kind of blew it out the water. What's happening in these Central American countries, South American countries, they're making big inroads to change their food culture, which is quite exciting. Loads of data, but it all kind of leans back into your N equals 1 early experiment. And people weren't making much noise about calories, calories in, calories out, and is a calorie. I mean, really, what one of the things your self experiment kind of shows us is that the quality of the food and the calorie isn't equal. So an avocado wouldn't be equal to something else, like a ready meal or something, even if they had the same calories. And that information is coming out more and more. But you just touched on that you're a dad now with two, and
that's right.
and so that's thrown you into a whole new food world. Does that make you feel more motivated? We're up against it every single day. So I'd like to, if you're okay, to talk about your food experiences kind of now as a dad and the challenges and all of that.
You bet. Yeah, no, it spurs me on even more so, because every other weekend you're at a birthday party, and some parents can be really good and not have so much ultra processed food and kind of focus more on real foods, at least. I mean, there's always the cake, of course, but it's unavoidable for the most part. But then some parties, it's like just your classic, just the most horrendous crisps or chips, potato chips, on the plate, on the table, sorry, and also sweets, biscuits, everything under the sun. And it's like, if you're doing this every other weekend, then it's that's bad for your children's health. But then you've got the fact that some families out there are eating this on a daily basis, and then it's like you put that on top of all of that. It's like, where's the idea of having an occasional treat? It's not an occasional treat. It's gone out the window. It's a daily occurrence. Like, that's just that's a habit, it's really bad. So I mean, I feed my kids real food, and again, going back to what we were saying at the beginning in terms of having balance and trying to not have your kids resent you by saying you are not allowed any birthday cake or anything like that. I try to mitigate all of that stuff. So I will always, and it depends at what time that the birthday party actually is. If the birthday party is at a lunchtime, right, and I always try to get them to focus on the real foods that are on the table, right. And then maybe they'll have three crisps or something like that, so like they get a taste for it, and things like that. That's the balance on that part. But if they get a birthday cake, a slice of birthday cake, and it's at a lunchtime, the party, I will cut even if they do a small piece of cake, because they know that I'm on it, basically.
The parents,
exactly. I'll cut that slice in half anyway, right? And take half to take home for another time. Sometimes she forgets and it goes in the bin. So, so which is great, but you cut it in half. So yeah, exactly. So at least she only has half of that portion, and that's only at lunchtime. If it is an evening one that kind of leads into dinner time, she's not allowed it at all, right? Until like the next day. And again, I will cut it in half. So you're trying to mitigate kind of the actual total impact at one time. And that's kind of like a little thing that you can try to do where, you're not getting your kid to, resent you for having it. But sometimes she'll say that she doesn't want it. And that's the other thing, is that, by doing these things and educating your children that, sugar and ultra processed foods not only rot your teeth, it rots your insides. And so they start to realize, oh yeah, well, that's not the healthiest thing, so I shouldn't have that option. She starts to make her own decisions, and I can trust her the vast majority of the time to do the right thing.
And your son is much younger, and your children are those young years that you still have that element of more, I don't want to say the word control, but control, where it's more in your power. But this is where it starts, the education. I mean, I remember taking my children to the day groups and the play groups, and there was always a drink of squash given to them and a biscuit. Yeah. And I would be negotiating with the children. Right, I bought my own. This is what we're having. We're having the water, and I bought my. And they just wanted something. They didn't feel left out. But I wasn't the only parent. I now obviously I'm a very zealous kind of nutrition person. I'm known for that amongst my kind of friends. But even back then, when I hadn't kind of come to low carb and all of as much as I did afterwards, and keto and all of that. There were lots of parents who wanted that sugar load down, and they were, trying to get the juice away. And so it was being pushed by the community onto them. And then as they went beyond that into the school, then the school was kind of dominating with the food of the child or the nursery for that day, and taking, desserts and puddings became a regular thing, and sweet drinks and treats very regularly after school. So bit by bit, the parents who were really quite conscious and quite, wanting to do the best thing, lots of the decisions were taken away as time goes on. And then, it becomes more and more challenging. How's your school and nurseries? Are they supportive, or do you have some challenges there?
Yeah, I wouldn't say supportive. They've adhered to my requirements. Let's say that. It's quite a cold thing to say, but you have to play the game a little bit. So, thankfully, at my daughter's school, they have the menu on a website, and it gets updated every term, and so I can look at what she's eating. And so some days she'll be allowed to have the meal that's cooked at school. But then some days it's like, fish fingers and chips. And it's like, well, you're not having that. So she'll just go with the packed lunch. I mean, the alternative option is that they do have a jacket potato bar. So, my kids aren't low carb. They still include real food starches within their meals. So at least having the jacket potato bar, she can have jacket potato, cheese and ham. And it's like, great, cool. That's again, going back to that balance of things. And, if I've, having to go to work early, for instance, and I haven't had time to do the packed lunch, it's like, right, we've always got that backstop to do that. And sometimes she prefers to have the jacket potato, which is fine. Now my son's nursery, and you'd have thought that because it's not, a government institution, it's private, that you can basically dictate what you want. But because it's a chain of nurseries, they have all of these policies in place and things like that, and it's basically the same as government stuff. Unless it's an allergy, they're not going to change things. However, with my contacts, I managed to get a dietitian's letter to say that he's not allowed sugar gluten, soy, and things like that within his meals. And so, like, it's all real foods that he has on his plate, which is fantastic. And yeah, the other really sad thing is that they are introducing, and this is at nursery, so 0 to 5, is vegetarian and even vegan meals at that age. And so my stipulation is that he has to have an animal food at every single meal. So they have to include that, whether it be some minced beef, some extra minced beef put on top of his meal, whilst the other kids are having a vegetarian meal and things like that. But I've had to enforce that.
Yeah,
and it's nuts that I've had to enforce that. Because I teach my both of my kids, what's the most important part of the meal, and they'll say every single time, meat. The meat is the most important part. Like, you have to make sure that you get that, and everything else is extra. So, and
it's a crazy upside down world. But lovely, and they know that at these really formative ages. In a world of people who will be telling them that it's not, and it's not the best thing, but it's not the best thing for the health, it's not the best thing for the planet. I was talking to Craig Emmerich just the other day on this topic about his boys and what they're eating, and he made a really interesting point. He was saying, if you put on a plate some lovely looking, fresh blueberries, some nice kale, and you put a piece of meat on there, a steak, most people, if you ask them, would say that the blueberries or the kale, they're your best food. If you had to choose one, they're going to give you the most vitamins, essential nutrients, micronutrients, all of that. And he was saying, I've got the data, because he's a data guy. I've got the charts, I've got the data. We know it's the meat. And what you're saying about your children being under 5 and being steered by public institutions and private institutions that are feeding them away from the nutrient dense food that's going to build their developing brain at the most formative time. We're in really odd times, really strange.
It is. And I mean, the evidence is really clear. And they've done some really interesting studies in Africa, for instance, just by adding, 50 grams of beef at 2 meals a day, so 100 grams in total, and that's a small portion, obviously, but those children in Kenya were smarter and stronger than those that didn't have that. And that's even just a small portion like that. So your meat and fish and animal foods make you smarter and stronger. Like, that's just the it should be a massive part of your kids' nutrition.
And like you say, we know it. We have data, and I was recently just checking up on different studies that are interesting results. There's ones that show, there was a systematic review that showed they whittled it down to 12 randomized controlled trials. They showed that children with nutrition deficiencies and those without, both of those, their cognition improved when they went onto a nutrient dense whole foods, real food diet away from processed foods. But I think what loads of people still think about the weight and the cavities and the tooth decay for children, but I find that it came out a year, I think, ago, that children in Dutch children are is it 7 centimeters taller than children in the UK. I mean, at 5 years old, I mean, that's phenomenal. So the data is showing since the 80s that children in the US and children in the UK, their height has been stalling and shrinking in compared to other nations' children. Like, so those deficits, we are stunting our children, like, and then massively. We have the cognition issues, and we have rising rates of ADHD and autism and neurodiversity, and all of that, and that's difficult to completely home in and completely definitively link that. But there's some very, very interesting studies about women who are pregnant eating whole food diets or taking supplements and having lower rates of autism. So there's some fascinating stuff around all of this. But yeah, so it's a different world that you're in now. So you've been in the nutrition space for a long time, and now you're navigating what you've been trying to help other people to navigate as a parent. And it is different because I have to make compromises, I would say, particularly with my son. So my daughter's on a ketogenic diet, and she loves it mostly, like pretty much, she's compliant because she loves the food and she's just so strong and healthy. And my son, he'll eat more real food, not low carb like your children. But we have the he's at that age where he's going into teenage years, and he wants to try all of the additional kind of crap, basically, that his friends are eating. I mean, his school, I'm trying to, the last 2 primary schools that the children went to, they were fantastic. One of them got me in teaching sugar-free workshops, real foods. We cooked whole dinners. At primary school, they were going home with cottage pie. They were going home with, lasagna made with real foods. Not pasta sheets, etc., etc. That was fantastic. But this current school, we haven't kind of got there yet. We're starting to have conversations, and recently they gave out a reward for children who academically had achieved and the best class, best attendance, and they gave a Domino's pizza. It's like, really?
Oh my God, that's so counter to what you should be doing. It's like, have a Domino's pizza so that you can become lethargic and stupid on your sofa. Why are you doing that? Give them something that's going to make them even more intelligent.
And there's so many whys to that. Like, why would you do that? I mean, even if they're not going to go down my line and give them some probably a non-food based treat or reward first, but then if they were going to a real food based treat. But actually, we've got parents who run restaurants and cafes, so instead of supporting a fast food chain and then teaching your children about nutrition, health, and the environment and waste, and then giving them dominant, I don't know. I think we've got so many challenges, which brings me on to how you're sorting out all of the challenges with the public health collaboration. So how's it all? So you're the director of the public health collaboration in the UK. I'm an aficionado, as many people who get involved and are touched by your work. They just become loyal fans and kind of groupies.
Thank you.
So how is it all going?
Yes, it's going very well. And to kind of give people some context, if you haven't come across the Public Health Collaboration before, we're a UK registered charity. We've been going since 2016, which is when I kind of, came up with the idea and pitched it to the likes of, David and Jen Unwin, Joanne McCormick, Ian Lake, Trudy Deacon, all those fantastic people that are on our scientific advisory committee today. We kicked things off with a crowdfunding campaign in February 2016, doubled our target, and then from March 2016, we've been growing ever since. And that's when I actually closed down my fitness bootcamp business as well, so that I could fully focus on this, on the Public Health Collaboration, PHC. And it also kind of removed, a quote unquote conflict of interest, because if I continued to have a private company that was promoting the same things and kind of lining my own pockets in terms of that, then the idea was to remove the conflict of interest. So that was the idea. We started off by advocating based on the current evidence that's available, completely coincidentally, the UK government published their new healthy eating guidelines in 2016. It was in May 2016. We had no idea that was coming. It just, the stars aligned in that respect. And so we went about, reviewing the evidence base for that, the actual advice that they were giving, and critiqued it in a report that's still available on the PHC website. We broke it down in terms of 3 major concerns that we had, which was the quality and quantity of carbohydrates that were being recommended. Also, the recommendation of no more than 35% total fat, and also the recommendation of no more than 10% saturated fat. So we were challenging those ideas by providing a report with all of the evidence, and then providing our own solution, which is the real food lifestyle. And again, that's available in booklet form that you can download as a PDF and kind of have on your fridge, hand it out to friends. And if you're a practitioner, then feel free to hand it out to your patients completely free of charge. That's the idea, is that the PHC is providing free resources to help people improve their health. And our vision for the future is that we want to help cultivate a society where everyone enjoys good metabolic health, and that's what we're striving towards now. And we're doing that by empowering communities and people, trying to inspire them to actually do that, because as you were touching on before, it's not just about trying to get your kids to you got to do that. At some point they're not gonna do exactly what you say. And so you have to inspire them to stick with it, and then also just educating both the public and healthcare professionals as well. And we're doing that in a myriad of ways, but mostly we're doing it through our annual conference, and all of the recordings of those end up on our YouTube channel. Your talk from, was it 2018 or 2019?
2018, which was when I first heard about you through Emma Williams introduced us. And did I become an ambassador before or after? I gave a talk as a patient with a patient story.
Exactly.
And then met you all. It was quite something, the conference.
Yeah.
And my background had been getting interested in low carb and ketogenic through medical kind of circles. So I came to the conference. My husband came along, and he was like, "Oh my goodness, Tim Noakes is here, and Simon Holcher, and David Unwin, and Dr. Peter Bruckner," and I was like, "Don't tell me who they are. I'll be nervous." I can't believe I didn't know who any of them were. But it was it was phenomenal, because I knew neurologists and doctors in those circles, and who the Charlie's Foundation were, and Matthew's friends. So the early conferences, they were held in London and in different areas of the UK, and they've become, they always have been an annual thing. And that's one of the biggest events of your year that you work towards, and then you put that material out, those talks on different subjects, on cancer, on metabolic health, on all these family health, and all these, and also physical health as well, physical activity, because public health collaboration isn't just about low carb nutrition, it's also about all of the tenets of health as well.
Exactly.
So just bringing you on to this year's conference, that you're just releasing the names of who's speaking, you've released where it is. So I'm really keen to hear more about all of that.
So we are returning to London after a few years hiatus from being in London. Last year was Sheffield, the year before that was Bristol. Of course, the 2 years previous were virtual, so it's nice to return back to London, and specifically at Fairfield Halls in Croydon, which is South London. It's kind of 20 minutes away from Waterloo and Victoria, so central London, but then it's easily drivable as well, so it's kind of a nice location where you can actually drive to it, but you can get to it via public transport very easily, and it's a really nice theatre, Fairfield Halls. Coincidentally, my sister used to work there. She used to be the theatre manager there, which is funny. But basically, it's a really nice theatre where they have orchestras and national symphonies and things like that. We're not in the big one, the 1800 seater. We're in the 750 seater, called the Ashford Theatre, which is still a very nice theatre, and it's going to be absolutely fantastic. But the theme of this year's conference is Nourishing Minds, Transforming Lives, and the idea of that is, we're trying to meld what's going on, particularly in psychiatry at the moment, with all of the ketogenic diet research that's going on in Edinburgh and other places around the world, with Iain Campbell, George Reed, Chris Palmer, all of that type of research. But Iain Campbell, will be coming to this year, which is great, along with Rachel Brown as well. So they're going to be speaking on mental health, and can you fix mental health through food, which will be fantastic. And then a couple of the other subjects are that does cholesterol cause heart disease, and we've got the likes of Dave Feldman talking on that, particularly with his recent research that is being published and widely spoken about. So that's fantastic. And then we've also got does red meat shorten lifespan as well, is another question that's being asked. Anthony Chaffee and Ken Berry will be speaking on that subject. And then last but not least is, can we save the next generation from the dangers of ultra-processed food? Which is, a very pressing question at this time. And we need to basically get on it. And the one person that I can say that will be discussing that is Chris Hill, who is our project lead for our Young Persons project, which is called Real Food Rebellion. And you can find out more about that on the website. If you go to phcuk.org/RFR, and that Real Food Rebellion is currently a schools program, and we're piloting it in Doncaster, and they've a primary school and a secondary school, and they've just done such a fantastic job of creating a program that's really going to help enlighten children and teenagers to work towards better lifestyles.
Excellent. And that's really where my heart is, the children and the prevention side of things, because a lot of the early work of the public health collaboration, but a lot of the low carb work generally has been around diabetes type 2, which is majorly important with the astronomical rates and how they're going up still, but also the devastating harm they do to families and to people's healths, and elevating all their risk factors and etc. So that's really important, and that diabetes was the area where low carb as well as weight loss was able to be demonstrated, that it's a successful intervention. So now I'm really delighted that the kind of discourse, the public discourse, is coming back to prevention, for families, that to get this stuff out. In the UK and the US, it's 2/3 of children's food are ultra processed foods. That's absolutely nuts. And we know that there's a big factor with inequality. So the neighbourhood you're born into, the family, the income you have, and you're limited with your opportunities. I was working on school programs in the UK before we moved out here to Australia, and I was travelling the country, and the difference you see in areas and their access to foods. Some people are within the UK completely cut off, and I know I'm hearing that as well in America on the vast scale, and we see it in Australia. So some people are much. It's not. I think it really upsets me when people talk about willpower and educating, and kind of telling families off. We're kind of very tuned into this, and as busy people, we're trying to keep on track of this with our own families, and it's not easy and it's not perfect, but it isn't a case of being lazy or willpower. It's some families really have have the food environment completely set against them.
Yeah.
Sam, I went off on a tangent because you started talking about family food. Sorry, but you were talking about the projects that you mentioned, some of the or one of the projects of Food Rebellion, which is awesome. I love to hear that. I love that it's in a secondary school because they're really hard to get into compared to primary. But you're doing other projects as well that people can get involved with and follow. And that studies as well, kind of putting the evidence freely accessible. You were saying on your website.
Yes, absolutely. So as an organisation, we have three major ambitions that we're striving to achieve, which is reverse the type 2 diabetes and pre-diabetes epidemics, get food addiction recognised as an official diagnosis. And then also undoing the childhood obesity crisis as well. So, obviously Real Food Rebellion is trying to approach undoing the childhood obesity crisis. Then we've got a new food addiction coaching service called Liberate, which is being run by the brilliant Ellen Calto, who's had her own health transformation, which is just an incredible story. She's lost at least 10 stone it was, so about 140 pounds, and has kept it off for like the past 14 years. It's absolutely incredible. And part of that was food addiction, and so she went about, she managed to overcome it, of course, and manages it to this day. But she decided that she would become a registered dietitian to help other people, and we're very lucky to have her, and we're doing the pilot for that is just starting at the moment, and that's being in conjunction with the University of Coventry, which is absolutely brilliant. And hopefully through that work, we'll get a food addiction coaching service available through the NHS, which would be brilliant to help people overcome those addictions, because it's just strikingly real, and it's absolutely bizarre that it's not being officially recognized as such, even though bizarre. The ultra processed food producers themselves have nutrition scientists to find the bliss point. They literally are saying that they're trying to make their foods as addictive as possible, and there's still like some sort of denial that this isn't real. And it's like, you said you're trying to achieve a bliss point so that your customers eat more and more and more of it. Isn't that an addiction?
And then we have the evidence of the brain, what it does to the brain, the sugar and the processed foods, the reaction on the different centers of the brain, and then we have behavioral addictions accepted, and that's a good thing. Gambling addiction for one. So I think that's strange, but I think it was Dr. David Unwin said when he was here in Australia at Low Carb Down Under, he was saying that he feels that maybe food addiction is where low carb was around maybe 8-10 years ago. So with this work and these demonstrations, and I mean, you've always, public health collaboration, been about the evidence, because that's how we get the point across, and that's how we build the momentum and the trust, and you get these concepts credentialed, and then we can kind of build a mass, which you've been really a big part of the push for change to have low carb accepted, and now we see tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people who are finding this, unfortunately not necessarily through their medical practitioners yet, but that, I think that's tipping as well. We're getting so many more people.
It certainly is.
And that's down to organisations and people like yourself, and you mentioned your scientific board, you mentioned your founders and yourself pushing, and which reminds me, just going off on a tangent, that I heard you say at one point that you are a natural skeptic, and that's why you're so good at this role. So do you want to tell me a little bit about being a skeptic? Because I think most people I'm talking to in this area I think that's how I came to feed my children a ketogenic diet, because I was told absolutely no repeatedly. But I was thinking, that doesn't make any sense. So, but
what are you talking about?
I didn't have that. When I was, my parents certainly were of, you don't question, the doctor says this, you do that. You mentioned asthma earlier, and I was awful asthmatic. I was on antibiotics all of the time. I was so chronically ill at 20. I had a huge change in lifestyle and came off them, and I realized I hadn't needed the amount that I've been given and all the medication I've been given. So tell me a little bit about being a skeptic and how that's helped in this role.
So my skepticism comes from my mother, and the case in point that I can really kind of rely on is that when I was 13, I had Hodgkin's lymphoma. So that's a treatable cancer, as long as you catch it early enough. And I bet, like you can see there, I've got a scar. So that's where it was. And they messed up the sewing there, but it's a nice reminder. I
did not know that about you. That you'd had that either.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. So what the deal was with that was that I was 13, so pubescent, but I had this gland, like my lymph node gland was swollen to about the size of a small egg, and so it was like very bulbous, like out the side of my neck, and so very obvious that something was wrong. We went to the GP, and the GP said that he's pubescent, like this sort of thing happens all the time, so come back to me in 3 months, and if it's still there, then we'll think about doing something. And my mum was like, no, that's not what we're doing here. You're gonna get it biopsied, and we're gonna find out what's going on. And so my mum had to really push for that, which kind of made me think, well, do these people know what they're talking about all the time? They can be incredibly helpful, but they can also be incredibly resistant as well, which is very can be dramatically terrible, because if the cancer had been left to fester for 3 months, then I would have gone up a stage or two. Luckily,
a different
it was
outcome.
just a very different outcome, because luckily it was just in stage 1. I had 2 months worth of chemo, and it was clear. So catch it early, get it sorted. That was it. But it required my mum to push and be a skeptic of this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. I want to get it. I want it right. It's not entirely fair to say that, but she had to push for that sort of thing, and so that set me on a train of being skeptical, for basically for the rest of my life. I've always been curious, and trying to find out the truth. During my mid-20s, I really got interested in Socratic philosophy, so Socrates, and really getting into the nitty-gritty of Socratic thinking, and so I just always have that framework in my head of Socratic thinking that if there's an instance in which something isn't true, it means that statement isn't true at all, and so it needs refining even more, and so you have to search for the truth more and more and more, until you get to the actual reality of the situation, and from that reality you can actually create solutions, because then you know exactly what you're doing. That's essentially where it comes from.
That sounds like a really poetic way to look into the the truth and the injustices around health, and you've inherited your mum's tenacity, it seems, as well, for picking a different path. and sticking with it, which we're benefiting from. With public health collaboration, you mentioned that there's free resources, and I think that's one of the wonderful things, that you put out really important information. You're the go-to resource, your charity, for example, the weight loss studies, collating really important weight loss studies that show low carbs highly effective, the most highly effective way to lose weight and sustain it, and as backed by the best evidence. And then there's the sugar graphics too, which I think, Dr. Unwin and her team put those together. They show how your blood is spiked, really visually, because I just prefer a visual. This is something that you can take to your school, put on your fridge at home, talk to your children about, bring to a lesson. So they're beautiful, and they're absolutely free, and then being translated into all sorts of different languages, so many now that I've lost count. And all of these studies and this information is all for the public good. So how can people get involved with the public health collaboration or support the public health collaboration? I became an ambassador to support, and they do great work in the community. So if you wanted to get really hands-on, you've got some knowledge, but there's different ways to support.
Yeah, absolutely. So best place to start is of course the website, so phcuk.org, and you have several options in terms of how you could support us. You could become a member if you want. It's £50 a year for UK residents, and £75 for international members, and that helps us keep the lights on. Because this stuff doesn't just happen. People need to do this through professional dedication. And that's a really helpful way. But we've also got as part of that, you get a members pack in the post, but we've also got an app, PHC Connect, where our members community can interact with each other. So that's really, and we've got some plans in the works to make that even more a valuable resource for our members. So watch this space on that. Other things you can do are that, as you said, you can become an ambassador for the PHC. So at the top on the website, there's a volunteer button. So you can do that. Apply to become a volunteer for us. And then also, if you need support yourself with a real food lifestyle, we have a weekly online support group that's available to absolutely everyone, and it's 100% free forever. So if you, again, on the website, there's a support button in the main menu. Click on that, and then you can sign up to our free online lifestyle support group, which is run by the wonderful Liz LaPla, who's our ambassadors coordinator. And speaking of which, there's an 8-session course attached to that, which you'll see on the page, on the support page there, but that's hosted on our YouTube channel, and again 100% free for everybody to go through. And our YouTube channel has a whole host of resources, from the real food lifestyle course on there, but also the videos from previous conferences, and just watching the YouTube channel in itself actually helps support us, because we have a small amount of advertising on the YouTube channel, which gives us a kickback, and it's a curated advertisers. So you'll never get a farmer or big food advert on a PHC YouTube video, but every little helps. So
yeah. And attending the conference as well, the one that's coming up this year. That sounds amazing.
Absolutely.
And
there's an early bird discount at the moment, so it's our lowest price
Get
ever.
in there.
So.
Yeah, I'm very, very tempted to fly over again, but we'll see if we can. So just to close up, we've covered loads, and I've taken up loads of your time, and this is a big one really, so it's not a very easy one to close on, but so So what would you say to a family why they should change food, and not that you're being prescriptive, but why if you were talking to a family that you cared about and you're trying to convince them why, and then what would the very first steps be, just baby steps?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if I was to do a Rangan Chatterjee, for instance, and doctor in the house type of thing, but I'd be like a personal trainer in the house or something.
Yeah,
like
that'd be awesome. I'd watch.
Yeah, wouldn't it? Oh, there you go. Maybe we should do that for the YouTube channel. That'd be cool. But yeah, I'd go in and ask the question: do you want to be healthier and happier? And if the answer is yes, then there are some small steps that you can take to begin with, and the first step is just trying to go back to traditional foods, and it's often stuff that they don't even think about. You were talking earlier about having kids, like you were teaching them how to cook a cottage pie, for instance, and a cottage pie can be a really good real food meal, and it depends on kind of where you are on the metabolic health scale. But if you're able to handle, potato, which is a real food starch, then just make it with potato. That's fine. But then you got mince and vegetables in there as well. So that's a really simple place to start for people. And even a Sunday roast. Sticking with a Sunday roast, and just be careful on the Yorkshire puddings, but it's a step in the right direction, basically.
Yeah.
And if you feel better for reducing the amount of carbohydrate that you have, then just have one potato or no potatoes. It's entirely up to you, really. And just doing those small steps. And then once you've started to get a handle on the diet side of things, then it's about, the fact that, you're going to have more energy. So you're going to want to go out and do more, and not just look at a screen, and so, going out for walks just around, around your local block, so for instance, my family and I, after dinner, we'll always literally just go for a walk around our street, and it can just be a 10-minute thing. That's all it has to be. Just a small thing connect. Like that. Yeah, 100%. Connect, get out, get some fresh air, stretch your legs, and that's all it needs to be. It doesn't need to be, you don't need to go to some country park and things. You can literally just go walk around the street. I mean, we and it's really interesting, like about what's available to you. So we live in a former council estate, right? So it's a real kind of mix of people that have been here maybe for a couple of generations, that are of kind of a certain mindset, and then people like myself who've kind of got a bit of an alternative mindset, and we're living in the same place, right? But we have very different lifestyles, right? And it's really interesting, like the mashup of that. And we've all got the same opportunities, and a lot of it is about mindset, and kind of going back to what you were saying in terms of having the right food environment. That's very important. I want to strive towards that. There is a bit of a two-way street here, though, in that you have to kind of think of what you can actually do right now with what you've got. So there's an element of trying to think about what small steps you can take to actually have a better lifestyle. And it just boils down to the question of, do you want to be healthier, happier, and live for a longer period of time as well, so that you can see your kids grow, you can see your grandkids grow, you can even see your great grandkids grow. I mean, I live next door to a guy that has got great grandkids, incredible.
It is incredible.
It's that kind of level.
It is.
Yeah.
And I think all of this can sometimes come across as like quite foodie, and we're kind of a little bit kind of obsessed by carbohydrates and, you know, what's right and calories in, calories out, all of that kind of thing. But it really, for me, it comes back down to some people won't get time with their grandkids, you know, like actually my dad, because he was a working class guy, and he, you know, he didn't eat these kind of foods, and so it becomes very personal to you when you see that. In generation, you know, my grandma nearly lived to 100, and then with the next generation, they're let 20 years off that, and that's you know, back to the very beginning of our chat. Those weeks are our weeks to live, and ideally we want to live them as well as possible, and that's what I want for my children, my family, and the community. So I really thank you for being a passionate public health advocate and tenacious, and being brave to kind of swap skiing for and going down all of these different kind of paths to benefit other people. So I really enjoyed catching up with you, Sam, and thank you for taking the time to chat with me.
Oh, absolute pleasure, and thank you, Claire. You've been a very, very welcome advocate over the years, and a great part of the community. So thank you.
Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please make sure to subscribe. This really helps us to be able to create more content.